a Midnight Waffles podcast.
This is BattleStations, a podcast about the Columbus Destroyers and the Arena Football League. I'm Frank Walker. Well, we are now at the end of the first season of Columbus Destroyers football, at least for the return of the Destroyers. It was a disappointment as far as the game on the field went, but we press on. We're heading into the playoffs now. As far as the Arena Football League goes, as we've talked about before on the show, the plan is to keep going through the Arena Football League postseason and keeping that going. And that's what today's show is. First of all, we have kind of a season wrap-up with Coach Matt Sauk, where we talk with him about what happened and his final thoughts before heading into the off-season there. And then we have a nice conversation with BJ and David from AFLFanzone.com. Have some talk about the upcoming playoffs and those opening games. So let's start with our conversation with Destroyers head coach Matt Sauk. Now welcome to Battle Stations, Columbus Destroyers head coach Matt Sauk. Well, Coach, we're here to the end of the 2019 campaign. How are you feeling? How's life going?
I mean, obviously, it was a tough year, but I'm already looking forward to next year. I'm ready. I'm ready for camp next year at this point. So I'm excited about what we have. I know that we'll be able to do well in the off season, but obviously I'm a little bit disappointing this past year, but overall I'm looking forward to what we have in the future.
All right, and before we get onto those quick questions about the future there, the final game of the season, what was your feelings about that game? I mean, it was I would say I was kind of impressed with how competitive it was. I didn't really know what to expect with the new players, the new quarterback, all that. I was impressed to see how the Destroyers showed up. What were your thoughts on that?
Extremely happy. I mean, I think we had talked about, but 14 new guys in the last 2 weeks, including a quarterback. For us to go out there and compete and drive in the last, minute to have a chance to win it against the number 2 seed in the AFL. I want to be honest, I'm extremely happy. I think our coaching staff did a great job getting the guys prepared, and obviously I think that, the players did a good job of preparing themselves and being ready to play.
And were you impressed with Kyle Rowley's performance? I mean, just coming in on a week, I don't know if he spent any time with the team in any forms of training camp or anything else. How impressed were you by his performance this last week?
Again, I thought he did a great job. I mean, he's a guy who's been in the league for many years. His biggest problem was, really just, saying the verbiage again. The last time I worked with him, I believe it was 2014 with Portland. So, he did a good job of preparing himself. He came in, made some great throws under pressure, and, it kept us in the game. Again, we scored 50 points. And, again, this is against a team that's, the number 2 seed in the league. They played all their guys. It wasn't like they were trying not to win or didn't really care. So, I mean, this was a game where I felt like, coaching staff-wise, player-wise, everyone showed up and really did a great job of playing hard.
All right. Now, looking back on the season as a whole, I know with 1-11, it's not the season you want it to be, but what were the top positives you take away from the 2019 season?
The fact that we fought every game. I mean, there was 10 out of 12 games we were in it. I love the fact that I have the ability to have possibly 16, 17 rookies that are now going to be considered veterans going into next year, who, in our exit interviews have wanted to come back, and that's positive. So, our goal next year will obviously be we want to add some more veterans, obviously. Obviously, we want to kind of see what we can do in the free agent market. But, I'm excited about what we have, rookie-wise. And the fact that, with a year underneath their belt, coming back next year, they should be a lot more comfortable, understand what it takes to be an arena guy, with conditioning, weightlifting, their weight, strength, and all that stuff.
Now, there's a interesting feeling because with everybody in the league on 1-year contracts. I mean, next year is kind of another free for all for guys, and then we have the potential of the XFL and whatever else is going on. How do you kind of strategize going on an off season like this, where there's so many unknowns? I mean, obviously there's the whole AFL up for grabs, but like we were saying, the XFL and guys trying out for NFL camps and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you never know what you're going to get. You're talking, 3 months until we have a chance to probably, even offer guys. And you got the XFL coming in. The disadvantage we have is the fact that we are a young team with guys that can still be in that type of league. You have a team like Albany who has 11 guys over 30. Those guys are not going to the XFL. So that is a disadvantage. But the good thing is that we've got a full off season, which is awesome, to look at players, whether it's rookies, veterans, whatever it is, evaluate, come up with a plan, know who we're going to go after, start contacting guys, and hopefully be the first person to contact them. That way that, if later on down the road, if they don't get that contract in the XFL, TFL, or NFL, that, we were the first team to contact them. And that makes a difference. We lost a guy in Wheelwright to Baltimore because, his decision came down to the fact that they were the first to contact us. So he felt like he had to obligate that. And so now that we have a full off season, myself and the personnel guy are going to do a great job of making sure that we're contacting these guys and making sure that we're, the first person to do that.
All right. And as an Arena Football League coach, I mean, what does the off season look like for you? I'm assuming you're going back to Utah. I mean, is it something where most of your energies are still on football? Is it, obviously you're going to have more family time. Do you focus on what business you have there? What does that look like for an Arena Football League coach going into the off season?
Well, right now, I'll probably take, the rest of this week off. I fly back home on Saturday. More likely I'll take a week off, but, we're going to get into next year. I mean, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start looking at free agents, rookie guys, start looking at their film, start ranking them, guys that we want to contact, start calling them, letting them know that we're interested, and start doing that way. We're going to be as active as possible. Obviously we can't deal with, veterans until after, the signing periods where only the team that has their rights can offer them. And that's probably sometime in October. But we want to make sure that we are very active in the free agent market with the rookies, where, we can contact them, talk to them, let them know that we're interested. Because again, if we bring back, 24 guys, 23 guys from, this past season's roster, we still have to fill in, 10, 15 guys, somewhere around there to get into camp. So it's important that we really hone in on those rookie free agents we want to go after, and obviously, the veterans that don't re-sign with their team, when that happens.
All right. And final question this evening, with this kind of season behind you, I mean, are there any lessons that you're like, I'm going to remember this after what happened this year going into next year? I mean, what were those, were there any top learning moments for you? Things where you're like, I'm going to remember that next time around?
Probably not go as young as I went. I think that's probably the biggest lesson. And, the good thing is that I think, ownership, came back to me and really, backed me in the fact that, that what we did was probably a good thing, that we have a bunch of young guys. And, these guys are, because here's the issue is that if you bring in 2 to 4 teams next year, like, there isn't that many veterans to go around. So you have to have rookies. And the good thing about it is we have, I'd have to look, but it's somewhere around 16 or more rookies that actually played this year. So that's big. And, those guys are obviously going to be free agents. They can sign with anyone they want, past the period that we can. and that's their right if they want to do it. But I think the biggest thing for me is to re-sign what we have, and then bring in guys that are veterans of the league that could come in and help the team, and obviously make us better.
All right, so it sounds like this season you did the Lord's work there, deepening the talent pool for the Arena Football League.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully those. I mean, we, in our exit interviews, all those guys want to come back. It's a great situation in Columbus. Our practice facility, how we treat players, how we travel is first class. Like, everything is done first class, and to me, that's a positive. So, I didn't really have anyone that said, hey, with me asking them, are you interested in coming back? And they said no. Every guy that we wanted to come back, that we asked, they said, yeah, 100%. This is a town that we want to come back to. And, again, Columbus is a football town, and it's a town that will back you. I mean, we were 1-11, and we had crowds that we shouldn't be having them, but because it's a football town, we did. So we start winning. I think those things are only going to, multiply and get better.
Well, Coach, thanks for coming on the show tonight. I think that I can speak for all Destroyers fans when I say thank you for this first season, and even though it was rough, we're all happy that the Destroyers are back in Columbus and that everyone's excited about next season.
Yeah, well, one is I appreciate it. All year long you've done a great job of supporting this team, and again, it's not easy when you're 1-11. It's not like we dominated. But again, we try to make sure that we did everything right. But I just appreciate you, doing what you do and backing us.
Thank you very much, Coach. You have a great evening. Okay, enjoy the time off.
All right, take care. Yeah, thanks.
And welcome to the BattleStations podcast. A couple of friends of the show from AFLFanzone.com, BJ and David. How are you doing tonight, guys?
Doing great. Thanks. How are you?
Let's just talk over each other. I was trying to give him the first talk, and then, that's how it works.
Yeah, I was too.
These things tend to be mishmashes after a while anyway. It'll all be good. So, all right. So we got, what was a pretty fun regular season of arena football. We're heading into the playoffs this weekend. I figure we'll start with the game that starts on Saturday, Baltimore and Albany. I'm not sure which one of you wants to start with this, but do either one of you feel like you want to figure out a way to talk me into thinking the Brigade are going to win this series?
Well, I mean, I think that, they have a potential maybe to win one of the games. I don't see them winning both, honestly, and probably not by enough of a margin, but I think they have enough playmakers on defense to where they could slip up and maybe at least win one of them. But yeah, because it is a two-game aggregate series, I don't see Baltimore beating Albany twice, because I think they're going to have to actually beat them twice instead of win one game and then lose by less than they won the first game by, for sure.
Well, I think as a Washington Valor fan, I can tell you point blank that you only need to win one game. Last year we lost by a 2-point conversion in overtime that only lost by 1 point, and then we went into Albany and won by 7 and went into the Arena Bowl. So theoretically, you only have to win one game. Do I think Baltimore can do it? Joe Hills is coming off of his suspension. I think they're going to be revving and ready to go. They're going into Albany, which is always a tough place to play, but they did beat Albany in their house this year. It was a high-scoring game. The defenses did not show up in that game. I really think that Baltimore does have a shot to do it because they're going to Albany first, and then they come home to defend their house. If they can find a way to keep it close in the first game, there is always a shot in the second game. I can't convince you to believe that, but there's always a shot to do it.
Well, yeah, it makes sense when we have a Valor fan on, that whole, it's the playoffs, who knows what's going to happen, that comes to light there. And you mentioned in that first game that Baltimore did beat them, and it looked like in that one they got it it looked like maybe it was on the strength of turnovers. Is it something where you think they need Albany to trip up, or do you think Baltimore just has enough talent that they can make a win out of these games and get enough points to go on to the second round?
I really think they need Albany to trip up a little bit. In the 2 games Albany lost this year, I noticed that they went for onside kicks at times where they maybe didn't need to do an onside kick, or they were trying to surprise the other team, and just a couple little mistakes like that where they were almost seemed like they were overthinking it a little bit. And the last couple of games, watching Baltimore's quarterback Shane Boyd, he is just getting the ball out kind of late, and I don't know. I don't see it. I think that Albany's going to have to make more mistakes than Baltimore is for the Brigade to pull off a win in this one, especially in 2 straight games. So, like I said, I don't see it. I mean, yeah, obviously anything's possible if they, something bounces funny or somebody trips and falls or something. It definitely can happen. But yeah, I definitely think Albany's going to have to trip up versus Baltimore just rise up and outplay them.
Yeah, and Shane Boyd is having a tough stretch here as of recently. I think I don't know that it has anything to do with his former Kentucky teammate Jared Lorenzen-Dine, but for the past 4 or 5 weeks, ever since that has gone down, his game has gone down. Now they did have a knuckle dragger with the Valor where the two teams got into a fight during the game, after the game, and but. This is a different team than we saw early on in the year. Early on in the year, Baltimore was scoring at will, and they had a defense that could stop you just about any time they really wanted to. This is a different team. Their defense has taken a couple hits. Joe Powell is still playing at his MVP form for the defense. I think he's going to be a defensive all-arena this year. I mean, he's doing really well. Can they stop Albany, though? Albany's offense is just offensive. I mean, it is unbelievable the way that they are stacking numbers. Can they keep that up? Tommy Grady is playing in MVP form. He is one of the top 2 candidates for MVP this year. Malachi is top 3. So, they got 2 of the top 3 MVP candidates on that offense. So can Baltimore find a way? They just have to find a way to hang in Albany and then come back home and find a way to do the same thing. Like I said, anything's possible. Do I think it's going to happen? I really don't. But like I said, as a Valor fan, I got faith that it can happen.
So it sounds like, from what I'm hearing in this, especially with the idea of just kind of hanging around, you don't really see much in the way of what I'd say conservative play calling in the Arena Football League. But from Baltimore's perspective, is this the kind of thing where you want to slow the game down and just minimize possessions and try and keep the overall scoring low to try and stay in it? Is that what you'd expect to see them try and keep this kind of a more plodding game by Arena Football League standards?
I don't think they can. I don't think you can slow Albany down like that. It's every game this year, Albany has scored, I believe, if I'm remembering the stat right, have scored 45 plus. So if 45 is on their low end, I think maybe they scored 36 against Columbus that first game or whatever when Columbus held them close. But either way, have fun trying to slow that offense down. You can do anything you want to, short of kneecapping Malachi and Tommy Grady and Colin Taylor. Short of doing that, you're not going to slow this offense down. So you need to find a way to slow them down other ways, like get a good turnover, find a way to get that, promising onside kick that nobody saw coming. Like I said, when Baltimore beat them earlier this year, they beat them by staying in the game score-wise. I think that wasn't the score like 63-61 or something like that.
It was pretty close.
You got a shootout, so that's the only way.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the score was close, but it was much lower score. It was 42-41. It was a lower scoring game, but it was that close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, so I think, Baltimore, if they want to slow down the game, they're going to have to win the toss at the beginning and take the ball. I think if they want to limit possessions, they're going to have to get the ball first, and they'll be able to limit possessions maybe in the first quarter. But like BJ was saying, you can't do it. Albany usually scores on like one play at least twice a game, like you just one snap and touchdown. So you're going to have to, I think, find some really well-timed onside kicks, and then maybe occasionally go for 2 when they're not expecting it and get it. You know what I mean? And get 8 points instead of 7 here and there along the way. And then maybe one additional onside kick. Maybe if they lose the first coin toss, kick an onside kick to start the game. Something like that. Just something out of the blue where they may not be looking for it. And I think that's the way they're going to have to – only real way they'll be able to control the game, because otherwise Albany just scores too fast.
And let's not forget that Albany just added Maurice Leggett to their defense. So a defense that was already sporting some pretty good hands on the other side, now they've added NFL talent, CFL talent to their defense again. So you're talking about a team that's already had problems scoring as of lately, coming up against an even better defense than they played earlier in the season.
That's a good point.
All right. Now, before we get to the next game that we're seeing this weekend, the game's going to be happening Sunday afternoon there. The Philadelphia Soul at the Washington Valor. I want to take a second. It's kind of an in between. Do you guys like this kind of playoff format with the two games in the aggregate scoring, or are you kind of hoping that next year when we see expansion this kind of goes away, or what are your feelings on it?
For me, yeah, I think if you're going to do aggregate scoring in the first round, the Arena Bowl almost needs to be aggregate scoring too, and so that's kind of how I see it. So I think with expansion, I would love to see it go away, especially if they just go to 8 teams next year. You just have, an 8-4-2 format. I think would be a lot cleaner, But it is unique to Arena too, though. So I can see some good points on it. But just overall, for me, I think that as the league expands, I would like to see maybe the aggregate scoring piece go away, especially because they're not using. If we looked at those tiebreakers, it was strength of schedule trumped head-to-head point differential. So, if they flip that to where aggregate scoring means more in the regular season standings, then I could see it meaning more in the playoffs. But as of right now, it's not. It's only the third level tiebreaker or something. So it doesn't make sense for it to be that big a deal in the playoffs, at least in my opinion.
Oh, well, me personally, I love it. I'm a pretty big soccer fan in the first place. The one thing that I do love about it is that you're guaranteed a home playoff game. You get these teams that sneak in here. Last year, we snuck in. Honestly, there was only 4 teams. We snuck in, but we got a home playoff game. And you know what? And that's revenue for the owners. That's revenue for the team. It's revenue for the league. I don't think it's going anywhere. I really don't. I don't think that you're going to – even if you put 8 teams in, they let 4 teams make it again. If you – get 10 teams in there, they let 8 teams make it in, that's fine. But I really don't see this going anywhere because it's revenue, and in a league that is striving to build itself and make itself so different from the NFL, I think it sticks around no matter what you want to do.
I think part of where it has some staying power is if they stay with a 12-game regular season. I think if they tried to expand and go to like 14 or 16 game regular season and then do this on top of it, I think that might stretch the season out too much for them. But with the 12 game regular season, I think it's all right. I agree a little more with Dave on the idea of just I like the idea of going to 1 game shots, and maybe we'll see that when it goes to expansion. But maybe you're right, BJ. Maybe it's sticking around, and there is a certain element of fun to it that's a little different, and I can see fans enjoying being rewarded with a home playoff game if your team makes it. So, all right, so jumping into the next series here. So we've got the Valor and the Soul. Now, these teams met twice in the regular season. The Valor took both of those games. Does that, in your mind, does that tell us anything about where this series may be going or what we may be seeing with this one?
For me, I think it definitely could. It definitely says a lot to me. Philadelphia was really sort of rough early on, but it was that second loss to the Valor that kind of turned everything around for them. So, in that regard, maybe they'll be fired up for it and ready to play. But it just really felt like to me watching the game, especially in Philly, that Arvell Nelson, he had their number. He knew, it's almost like he knew what kind of coverage they were going to run. He just basically was able to do whatever he wanted to do whenever he wanted to do it. So I do think it does have some bearing on the game. I think that Washington, they're obviously the higher seeds, so they'll be favored and should be, because I think that Philadelphia, especially, they were playing their subs last weekend, but they got dismantled up at Albany. But that was so that's not something that you want to see walking right into the postseason, even with a lot of backups playing. But I think it's going to come down to Philadelphia having to change their mindset a little bit on how they're going to play defense, how they're going to defend Nelson. And I think the first 2 games definitely have a lot to do with this one. I'm sure there's a lot of film study going on at the Wells Fargo Center this week.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. But both those games were close. I think the game up in Philadelphia was like 6 points or 7 points, if I remember right. And then the game in Washington came down to a Josh Reese 45-yard touchdown with like 16 seconds to go up to win that game. Both games are close. If you want to make that bulletin board material for a team, then you obviously got the wrong guys in the locker room. They don't look at I've talked to so many guys this year. They don't look at it like that. It's just a number in a column for them. But Philadelphia has had the Valor's number for the past couple years. This is the first time that we've swept the season series, but Arbel Nelson is having an MVP type season. I know, like I said earlier, him and Tommy Grady are going to fight it out for the award. The thing is, the Valor honestly have a chip on their shoulder. And I know that they've beaten the Philadelphia Soul this year twice, but they totally feel disrespected. I've talked to a number of the guys after the games. They all say it. They don't like Philly, and Philly doesn't like them. It's not a love-hate relationship like Baltimore and Washington have because they're big brother and little brother, but Philadelphia and Washington just don't get along. They've never fought each other, but they just don't. And, Nelson does have the Philadelphia's defense's number. What I think is we're going to get out of this is going to be another close game. I think it's going to be within 7 points, and then we're going to go up to the Wells Fargo Center, and they're going to duke it out. And like I said, I think this is going to be the closest contended series of the two. I think Albany's probably going to win by a 14-point aggregate when it's all said and done, but I think the Valor and the Soul are going to come down within 3 or 4.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think it's definitely going to be very close. It's really going to come down to can Philly's defense figure out something to do with Nelson, get him to turn the ball over, get some pressure, make him make a mistake or something, come up with some kind of a big play. James Romaine has made big play after big play for the Soul this year, but in those Valor games, he wasn't necessarily at his best, and so I think that he might realize that and be looking to make a big play. And so if we can get a big play out of him, I think definitely the Soul has a shot to come out of Washington with a win. And then I think Philly plays much better at the Wells Fargo Center than they do on the road, so that would be what would have to happen, I think, for Philly to pull out the series. But I agree with BJ, it's going to be maybe 3 or 4 points aggregate for sure.
Now, looking at how the two teams' seasons unraveled, or not unraveled, but just played out. The Valor, just looking at their schedule and how they played, there was kind of this almost balance to it. I mean, they lost the first 2, won the next 3, and then loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, win. I mean, it's pretty balanced, whereas Philadelphia had kind of some streaky runs. They had a streak of 3 losses and a streak of 4 wins during the season. If you're Philadelphia, especially after that last loss where Albany just, as you said, kind of dismantled them, does that streakiness cause some concern if you're a Philadelphia Soul fan going into this game? Because I understand it was, kind of that late season game. You're going to the playoffs. But when we've talked to Coach Sauk, something that makes a lot of sense is in the Arena Football League, it's not like you're putting in a whole string of second stringers. You don't have that many guys on the team to begin with. So it's not as if you're just saying, okay, here's the white flag team or whatnot. I mean, if you're Philadelphia, are you worried about that as far as how you've seen your team perform?
I think it was a little troubling. I do know they put in backups, but both teams put in a backup quarterback, and Albany still got the 72 points. So I was a little troubled by it. I'm a little more troubled with the streakiness of the team, like you were saying. They had 3 losses in a row, then 4 wins in a row. Well, now they've lost 1. Are they going to lose 2 more? Are they going to put it back together? So, I'm really hoping that just kind of that playoff experience they had from, the previous years of winning the Arena Bowl, I think in 16 and 17, that maybe they'll kind of rely on that past experience to kind of refocus the team, maybe get some veterans going. I think, the quarterback for Philly, Dan Rodabaugh, has got to have a sharp start to the games. He's been a little shaky in some of the games that they've lost, especially at the beginning with accuracy, just missing some open throws and things like that. And maybe it's on the receivers. You can't really tell sometimes. But yeah, I think it is a little concerning. It's going to be very telling at the end of the first quarter if Philly's going to really be fighting for this.
Yeah, and especially after Philly lost Washka earlier this year, I really thought they were going to go in the tank. Because he was one of their number 1 targets, and then they went on that run. And now that run, they didn't really blow out anybody I think they Did they blow out Columbus? I can't remember.
I don't recall actually. Now that I'm thinking about it,
on their winning streak there.
Yeah, on the 4-game winning streak, I think they only blew out one team. Everybody else was really close. They they beat Albany by 1 or 2 or whatever it was, and then it was just a good streak. Yeah, win's a win, but they didn't manhandle anybody at that point. And then to get handled by 50 in that last game, and like you said, yeah, they did put in some backups, but so did Albany. So in that case, you're still getting manhandled. So is that going to be something that's psychologically against them coming into the game? I really don't think so. I think they're a bunch of veterans, and like David said, they did win the Arena Bowl in 16 and 17. And so I think that they're just going to come into this game. It's a clean slate. Everybody's 0-0. Just dig down, find out what everybody's about, and can they find a way to stop Nelson? And can Nelson find a way to punch one more in the end zone? Because he had 8 touchdowns last week, and I think he had like 6 or 7 the week before. So he's on a roll. He leads the league in touchdowns, leads the league in total yards, leads the league in rushing yards, leads the league in rushing touchdowns. So can you find a way to stop that guy? He's a big boy. He loves to run over people. He loves to stuff it down your throat. Can Philadelphia find a way to do that? And I think that's going to be the game plan. Find a way to stop Arvell Nelson, and you find a way to stop the Valor.
All right.
I definitely agree with that.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this evening, gentlemen. And I do want to let you, if you have any last thoughts on this weekend's games before you go, what's the last thing you'd want to part to people with before they watch these games over the weekend?
I think for me, just watching, the Albany game is watch what Baltimore decides to do with Malachi Jones. How are they going to try and defend him? Coming in motion and things like that. And I think that will determine whether they're going to stay competitive or not. For the Philly game, I think you got to keep an eye on James Romaine. Is he going to be able to step in front of a couple of passes? If he can do that, then Philly's moving, maybe moving on to the championship game. If he can't get some coverage on that, then the Soul might be in some trouble.
Yeah, and then the same thing for me in the Albany-Baltimore game. I think Baltimore needs to get hands in Grady's face immediately. He gets the ball out of there extremely fast already, but if you can get your hands in there immediately and let Joe Powell and those defensive backs just kind of try and cover and put some hands up over Malachi, you're going to have a chance to slow them down. I don't know that they're going to be able to, but in the Philadelphia-Washington game, it's all about Nelson. It really is. If you can stop Nelson, then you stop the Valor, because I think all but 5 of the touchdowns the Valors have scored this year have come through Nelson. So stop Nelson, you stop the Valor, but I don't see it, and go Valor.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this evening, gentlemen, and look forward to it, and we'll talk with you again soon.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to Battle Stations.